So I'm at Auchan this morning because that's what I do on Saturdays. I get up and wait for them to open the doors. And I go in there, guys, the place is full, rammed, stacked to the ceiling, full of Christmas stuff, Christmas decorations, those cutesy Christmas sweaters, wrapping paper. I mean, what is today? November 5th? What's today? 6th. I know it's cliche, but oh my God, who shops for this stuff now?
I'm actually really surprised because when I first came to Poland all those many years ago, nothing was in the shops until the 1st of December.
Exactly.
And Poland, I am very, very disappointed in you.
I agree completely. I'm looking around. Who says, you know what? I better get these cute little elves because who knows if there'll be any Christmas decorations available a month from now. I mean, come on.
Well, of course, it's
going to be Easter eggs on Boxing Day.
But I mean, of course, this is nothing to do about like Polish people or people in general. It's about retail, and as things become more, particularly with the shopping centres, shopping malls, where there will be a kind of, you're in a shared retail environment with lots of other retailers. There will be the owner of the mall who will be, be like, think about doing this now, and it's time to do this, and everyone else is starting to sell Christmas stuff. So
you make a good point, a fair point, Josh, because. Yeah, Auchan, this is a massive company. They have an entire fleet, an entire department of people dedicated just to the subject of when to put stuff on the shelf. So I trust that they know what they're doing. They have the data to back it up. It's just depressing that the data tells them to start selling it now.
It's very depressing.
It's just weird. But speaking of weird, that was a weird way to start the show. But sorry about that. Welcome to the news, everybody. We are
it's the
back.
News. Okay,
it is the news, not Christmas. I've got November 6th, and it's full of Christmas stuff. Unbelievable. Welcome back to the news. We did have a break last week, so we got a few things to talk about. Gabby is here with us today.
Hello.
Because Dr. Mike is on a beach somewhere again, as he often is.
Yeah, Dr. Mike's on the beach, so you get the beach in.
I gotta.
But
I'll give that a 6.5 maybe. All right, Gabby, I'm glad you're here because we're going to start with a news story. I saw this about a month ago, but I've been saving it until you were back in the studio for reasons.
So kind.
For reasons that will be very, very obvious in just a moment. This is a news story.
We've got a whole load of mansplaining saved up.
I wanted to ask you about this. I gotta get your take on this. And again, it'll be obvious in just a second. Here's the thing. Apparently, it's becoming maybe not a trend. Maybe that's too strong. But here and there, we're seeing a growing movement, let's say, towards employers giving women the right to have time off during their periods. This is becoming a thing in Poland.
Isn't that just like self-protection for the men?
What is your take? First of all, what's your take on the idea generally? And you think this is going to go somewhere or not? And give Josh a minute to think about whatever puns he wants to make.
Well, I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea, depending on how it's implemented, because obviously a lot of women do have some quite serious problems that don't really get taken seriously by medical professionals.
All right, fair point, yeah.
I'm thinking particularly like endometriosis in particular, which is a horrible condition that affects women during when aunt Flo is visiting. So endometriosis is basically when your endometrium, that's the bloody stuff that lines your uterus.
Do we need to get into details here? I'm not sure we do.
I think so.
Okay.
So that's it's when your endometrium grows outside of your womb on your organs, and when it sheds, it means you've got blood shedding not just from your uterus, but from, I don't know, bits of your kidneys or your lungs or wherever it is. So and it's quite a common condition actually. I think it was 1 in 10 women suffer from it. So if it's this kind of thing, then yeah, like some women do need time off.
All right, it's a fair point. Some women have an exceptionally difficult time every month. Okay, that's a fair point.
And then there's things like PMDD.
But is that realistic? Is that workable? Is that a workable solution to give them time off work? Is it fair? What about the guy who's hung over on Monday? Why doesn't he get the day off?
Because I'm pretty sure he did it to himself.
What about somebody
they do get the days.
Somebody who just has migraines, for example, they're just afflicted with that or some other ongoing chronic condition.
People with migraines get days off all the time when they've got a migraine.
Okay.
Well, but perhaps we need to be a little bit clearer about that. I mean, this is extra time off that's allowed, presumably, rather than kind of just taking an emergency day's holiday or whatever. Because, of course, I mean, that's always been,
Well, I think part of the problem is that the way days are taken off in Poland is kind of a bit strange, isn't it? Like a lot of companies, they won't let you just have a random day off. They want an L4. or something
which means
like
that it's got to be like 3 or 4 days or a week,
off or something like that. So in this case, if they're giving women time off for the shittiest days of their periods, that's a lot less L4s to deal with, and you're going to be away for maybe 1 or 2 days and then come back.
Hold on, Gabby. Let's say there's a department. There's 5 people. There's 2 guys and 3 women. Is it fair for the 2 guys that the 3 women have an extra day off or 2 every month because of nature? Is that fair as a workplace policy?
I think so. Like, if you're having a bad time, then you're having a bad time, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it. It's not going to be all women either. It's just going to be like the worst cases.
Are you going to challenge? Are you going to challenge the word of a woman who says, "I need this," as opposed to a woman having, let's say, normal time of it every month?
Well, I guess that's just the way of the world, isn't it? Like, I don't know what you want me to say.
No, there's no right or wrong answer. I just want to get your take.
I mean, it is a complicated. I mean, we have. I mean, and this has been the case for many years already. With the situation with maternity leave, and if you're a small business and you employ somebody who's a woman and who then becomes pregnant, then you are contractually obliged to kind of keep their job open, pay them, and for a small company that. That's a massive, massive percentage of its cost. I think
actually what would be a good idea if Poland generally moved away from the L4 towards self-certification of, like, if you're going to be ill for a day or 2 with the flu, then you should just be able to self-certify yourself.
Good luck with that.
Well, some companies do it. It works much better because they don't have people going off on L4s all the time.
But, with the... what can we call this? The monthly period leave, or whatever you want to call it, menstruation leave. As long as these are private companies doing it, it's nobody else's business. If they want to do this, if they want to offer this as a benefit, let's say, of working there, hey, go ahead. Yeah. If they feel this is a competitive edge in the marketplace to attract employees, especially if it's a female intensive workforce for whatever reason, hey, more power to you. Go for it.
And let's face it as well. At the moment, women are smashing it out the ballpark when it comes to academia, qualifications, all that kind of stuff as well. They've certainly been overtaking the men in what they're able to do. So
I thought you were supposed to remind us about how hard it was to be a woman.
It is hard, though. It's so difficult.
Make up your mind.
No, but I mean, statistically,
Yeah, but I mean, you talk about all this. I mean, it is a vastly greater proportion of women going to university than men. But it's but I mean, it's all kind of nonsense degrees, isn't it? I mean, I don't know, sort of virgin birth studies is not really the same as engineering or.
Who says women are doing virgin birth studies?
Well, they're not doing STEM, are they?
No, they're all doing. They're going to doctoring or sociology or stuff like that.
Yeah, okay. Sociology is a nothing degree.
Psychology.
Psychology.
No
you
offense.
Say that.
We just offended like everybody there, but okay, sorry.
You say that, but just look at the way employers are psychoanalyzing you all the time now. If you want a job there, all those testings and blah blah blah.
Yeah, I mean it's quackery though, isn't it? Really.
So can we agree? Let's bottom line this. Can we agree that if a private company wants to do it, hey, go for it? But hard to imagine this being government policy, like mandated for all employers.
I can see it happening.
That might be a bridge too far.
Well, again, I mean, if you're a small business, can you physically afford it? What happens is if you can't afford it, then it depresses wages because you have to make the money back somehow, or you just don't employ people, or you don't expand.
But has anybody ever heard of some other country, being like a leader in this field, so to speak? Has anybody ever heard of a Dutch kind of, I would expect this in Scandinavia, the Swedes saying you get, 3 weeks off every month.
Kind of like, oh, damn, look, it's my one day this month when I've got to go to work.
Exactly. I've never heard of that. So that's why I was surprised to see here in Poland because, I was just surprised.
I want to say that the UK might have been like kicking it about as an idea as well. I don't think it's just Poland thinking about it. Let's face it, like nothing's happened yet. So, people put these ideas out there all the time.
Well, interesting, and like I said, just wanted to get your take on that, Gabby, because you are uniquely qualified to comment on that, let's say. Yeah. Let's move on to a much more serious subject. There's no good way to segue here. The situation on the border with Belarus continues to go down in this really nasty downward spiral. This week there was
Are they still refusing to pay for the wall?
They're refusing everything. It's just a really nasty situation all around. There was a really disturbing video that went viral this week.
Oh God, yeah. Yes.
The Polish border guards kind of getting physical with some people, with some women and kids on the border. Not a good look at all. There's even like pot shots. The Belarusian, the guards on the Belarusian side taking like flares, like, pot shots at the Polish guards. There's the issue of building this huge fence. There's the cost involved. There's the EU wondering what's going on. And we got some stats this week, something like, what was that? Lost 24,000 people trying to cross the border over the last couple of months. Heading into the winter, no reason to expect that it's going to get any better.
No, actually, I think there's a lot of reason to expect it's going to get better because people are not going to make the journey when they've...
How about the people who are in Belarus now?
Already, yeah. But, I mean, there are increasing numbers of people actually returning to places like Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan because they've been getting messages about how sodding cold it is in the forest on the border between Belarus and Poland, and you don't want to be camping out there in the winter.
Not in December, you don't want to be there.
Got a question.
Can you imagine?
For you guys, you're both ex-Europeans. Gabby, you're still European.
Still European
through your Hungarian side, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people forget that there's actually a part of the EU that's dedicated to managing the borders of the EU. It's called Frontex.
And it's just as efficient as every other EU department.
Frontex. They're basically as useless as everything else.
Sounds like a plaster, doesn't it?
As an outsider, as a non-European myself, I want to put a question to both of you, actually. How is it that if you literally wash up on a beach in Spain or in Italy, you just walk right into the EU, and there are organizations that are willing to help you, and there are resources available to you. But if you walk across the border into the European Union from Belarus into Poland, you find a huge fence and guns pointed at you. Why, if the European Union is supposed to be uniform from one end to the other, top to bottom, why such completely different receptions in two different parts of the same administrative body?
I guess it's more difficult to go across the sea, number one. And number two, people like their beaches. So you're not going to be building walls around.
Well, yeah, it's also where they're coming from, because, I mean, if you're coming from North Africa, then clearly like Italy or Spain or Greece or Turkey.
But the EU is nobody's talking about building a fence there or putting forces there or putting interdiction resources in the water, boats and whatnot to turn these people around.
That's not true, John. I mean, the Italians are fed up to the back teeth with all the money they have to spend.
The Italians are, not the Brussels. The Italians are, yes. And then the nations of Europe are taking some action, but Europe, in the form of the EU, doesn't seem to have a coherent, consistent policy on this.
But yes, you repeat yourself.
Yeah, I guess.
Is there anything that they do have a coherent and consistent policy?
Yes. Going back to the Belarusian border, when it's a reasonably manageable level, I don't know how many people are trying to cross every day, but let's say it's in the hundreds. It's a number that the Polish forces can handle themselves. But let's say there was some kind of surge that made it physically impossible for the Poles to kind of hold the line, and you had people going over the fence or around the fence or whatever they have to do. It becomes a humanitarian crisis as well.
Does,
yeah.
It's no longer a Polish affair. It's it becomes a United Nations affair, maybe. Mm-hmm. You think there's any chance we're going to reach that point and we're going to see some really disturbing scenes?
This is very good. So. I mean, we've discussed this obviously in previous shows to some extent, but I mean, I think whatever one's views are about, immigration, economic migration, asylum seekers, refugees, blah, 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 the different kind of who qualifies as what. The truth is that there's increasing numbers of, unfortunate and presumably desperate people who are being actually manipulated. They're just pawns in a kind of power game that Lukashenko's trying to kind of deal with Poland and with the European Union. And, it's horribly kind of cynical, really. I mean, these people are they want to come to Europe for sure for all the perceived benefits, but I mean, they would, given the choice, they'd rather not be freezing in some subarctic forest.
Has anybody seen? I've not seen anything about this in the news. Instead of going through Belarus, why aren't they continuing, maybe going further north into Lithuania, also in the European Union?
Well, actually, I mean, I didn't flag this up before the show, but I mean, I saw a piece just a couple of days ago that Latvia now has, I think, an 11-foot fence along the entirety of its border with Belarus. And that's just gone up. It's been built really, really quickly because, I mean, they're actually, they're having it worse than Poland is because it's a much smaller country. They don't have the military and border resources that at least Poland is like a big nation in that sense and has all that stuff. And, of course, I mean, there's the whole kind of post-Cold War thing. So there's some degree of kind of infrastructure.
There's some easy metaphors in there somewhere. The Berlin Wall was supposed to symbolize a divided Europe, and knocking down the wall means a united Europe, and now walls are going up everywhere. We're just headed in a weird direction, it seems. But
yeah, I mean, because Hungary has put up a
on the border with Serbia, with Serbia. Lots of barbed wire.
They were talking about Hungary. I was reading yesterday, I think, or today, talking about opening up a corridor and then letting the migrants go to Germany or wherever they want to go, and let Germany deal with it, because a lot of people are saying they're fed up of managing it and not getting support.
Well, this is the other thing. Sorry, John, but I mean, this is the other thing. It's not. I mean, getting into the EU is the first thing, because once you're inside Schengen, theoretically, you can go wherever you like. But actually, people, they want to go to Germany or Britain. Actually, those are the two prime destinations, because of things like, job opportunities, welfare, housing.
Sweden as well, I think.
And existing communities.
Sweden has been popular. I'm not sure if that's because actually Sweden invited people in, which they're certainly not doing now.
France also, I think.
Again?
France.
Again, I think France is not keen anymore.
Well, it's not whether they're keen or not; it's whether you have family connections.
Gabby, you mentioned attitudes among the public in Hungary. That's an interesting aspect as well, because in the media you're going to see criticism of what's going on the Belarusian border, from the activist groups and people who are affiliated with refugees and resettling these kind of people. You're always going to see objections from them for obvious reasons. However, and you tell me if you think I'm wrong, I don't get the feeling at all that there is a lot of popular support for popular support for not building walls. In other words, I got confused over my own words there. There's the public, certainly in Poland, probably in Hungary as well, supports what's going on, that is the construction of these barriers, or is neutral about it. I don't get the feeling a significant portion of the population is against it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't seen the stats. But I
would suspect that I have seen some kind of opposition to it across bits and pieces of the media, but I suspect very much that's just simply because it's people in the political opposition using it as an opportunity to just kind of like throw rocks at the government, as always.
I think
but I think the government also use it as well as whoever the government is, they're going to use it. Like, we built a wall.
But don't you think
as their own kind?
Don't you think your average man on the street in Poland and probably in Hungary is okay with the idea of building these physical barriers to keep out refugees,
because
whatever you want to call them?
Crisis. Like, if it's one or two people, then you can deal with them, and the resources are there for them to be dealt with. But if you don't have the resources, or there's a huge wave of people that you have to deal with, and you would have to deal with them, it becomes unmanageable.
Just one more thing before we bring this subject to a close. The Polish government continues to institute this. It's like a state of emergency, which allows them to curtail media freedoms on the border, which is a creepy aspect to this. You would think that, sunlight being the best to disinfect it, you would think that they would want people on the border saying, look, we're doing this in the most humane possible way. We're being fair about this. We're following Polish laws. We're following European laws. Take all the pictures you want. You would think that that's what they should do. But they continue to keep journalists far away.
This is what I mean when you say that. When I said that, the politicians are going to use this for whatever advantage they can, and if that's to curtail media freedoms, not just with the wall, but eventually somewhere else down the line, if that's what they want to do, then they're going to use it. So I think it's a disaster situation all around, really.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just, it's more of the same old thing that you kind of, you bring in measures to try and stop something bad happening, and then you discover that you've sort of thrown a baby out with the bathwater, and you've actually kind of, you've narrowed people's individual liberty or something like that.
As long as we're on the topic of arguing and controversy, stuff that gets people emotionally involved, let's throw in one more topic that is actually relevant this week, this coming Thursday. The 11th, of course, is Independence Day in Poland.
Oh, another holiday, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. I think it'll be 2 or 3 days after we post this episode. Very, very big deal for obvious reasons. Every country. Wait, does every country have an Independence Day? I guess not. Many countries do.
Britain doesn't.
Some don't. Well,
okay, we do now, actually. Yeah. Brexit referendum day.
Anyway, Polish Independence Day on November 11th. Just like everything else in today's world, it's heavily, heavily, heavily politicized. And that politicization, help me, Josh,
politicization.
Yes, has been manifested in the form of a parade that takes place every year on November 11th. The parade is associated with the political right in Poland and the parties of the political right. And it's become, extremely controversial. The other side tries to shut it down. Legal challenges, even procedural things like challenging their right to use particular streets and whatnot, and trying to get it classified as something other than it is. There's various legal maneuvers to try to cancel the march. It appears that it will go on as usual. Guys, I think your take on November 11th march in Warsaw, which I forgot to mention is in Warsaw. Your take on this probably depends on where you stand politically. If you're on the political right, you think it's a good thing, it's patriotic and affirms, nationalist values. If you're on the political left, you think it's excessive and maybe offensive to certain groups of people. Take it away.
I just think it's a shame that these do get hijacked, these Independence Days, because they do kind of get hijacked by whoever it is expedient towards. But I think it's a shame, actually. I think a
shame that they have the march?
No, it's a shame that the left don't take part in it in order to water down the kind of right-wing kind of...
There is something of a counter-march. It's kind of a joke.
No, I'm not talking about a counter-march.
No, okay.
Because usually what happens is you get these kind of... And I'm not talking about just the right here, because I'm very aware that there's people on the left that can also be loud, annoying and aggressive. So, I'm not just talking about either side of the political line or however many quarters there are or whatever. There's always going to be a contingent of loud, annoying, disruptive people, and I just think it's a real shame that they're allowed to almost take over and win.
Well, exactly, yes.
People should stick around. Like, if there's a twat there, you should tell them to sod off, and actually it would be much better, I think, politically expedient if the left, in large numbers, actually also joined the same march.
Yes, I think that you're absolutely right.
It would be a good judo move.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, you want to dilute the fringe.
You want the Independence Day to be a celebration for everybody.
Exactly.
And it's actually, and in this country more than most, it's a very, very legitimate celebration. I mean, the country didn't exist for 120 odd years. So, I mean, to gain independence after that amount of time, and to have managed to preserve the national identity through all those periods.
And have your own, your own left-wing takes on why independence was good for Poland as well. It doesn't have to be everyone singing from the same sheet. Everyone can think of a good reason for it. Like,
left wing doesn't automatically mean communist, although
just that there are a lot of people among the media class, especially, and those to the left, that kind of look down on the people who are marching and just kind of embarrassed by it. And I remember I've seen this every year in recent years. I'm sure I'm going to see it this week on Facebook, where people in various expat groups post these things where, they ask if it's okay to go outside on Thursday and should they just stay indoors. And I mean, what the fuck are you talking about?
If you talk like that, you give people undue power that they don't actually have.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts when people say, what are you talking about? So, very divisive. It'll continue to be divisive, I'm sure. But,
don't let it happen. Take it back.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed that there's no violent incidents and nothing stupid happens on Thursday. Hopefully, it goes about in a peaceful way. But Thursday is Independence Day, a day off on the good side.
Well, it depends if you're paid for it or not.
Well, yes. Most people who work in an office, I guess, are happy to have the day off.
Corpos are happy, or corpo people are happy.
And since it falls on a Thursday, Friday is de facto a day off.
Friday's the
in the
bridge
sense
day,
that nothing is going to get done, but what are you going to do? Let's bring things local here for a minute. Here to Krakow, two things we want to sneak in here. One is it's funny, but at the same time it's not funny. Let's go to the bus station right behind Krakow Plaza, right where the Burger King is downstairs. If you know where that is, there is a set of escalators, moving staircases. What do you call them, Josh?
Travelators, if they're not.
Travelators.
Are they ascending or are they like horizontal?
Both like this.
Escalators.
Escalators, okay. Yeah. I thought there was some UK word for that. Anyway, escalators. And they've been broken. They have been broken for the last 3 years, since November of 2018, completely broken. Now, this is right by the bus station. People are coming out with their luggage, and they have to physically climb these regular stairs instead of enjoying the convenience of the escalators.
With buggies and children.
How is this even possible? Well, it's back in the news this week because our very competent, skilled, insightful, intelligent people in the government have looked at this and said they can fix it. They can fix it. They just need 2 million zlotys. Just 2 million zlotys. The problem is, of course, nothing is budgeted for this. But in this article I found that describes the whole situation, they said they've already put, in the last 3 years, they've already put 363,000 zlotys during 19 maintenance calls to these staircases. They get it fixed. It works for an hour and breaks again. 19 times it's been fixed and then broken again in the last 3 years. Here's a great quote. The quotation is from somebody on the Krakow City Roads Authority, which is the department responsible for this. The quotation goes like this. It says, the reason for the problems was the wear on the mechanism under the stairs and the corrosion of structural elements caused by rainwater.
Because who'd have thought if you put a big metal thing with moving parts in the open air,
I know,
it's not going to rust
exactly.
away.
It's not covered. It's out in the open air.
Who could have foreseen it?
I know. It's just voodoo. It's like
it wouldn't surprise me either, given
spirits.
the kind of people who hang around these places, like in the midnight hours and everything. If it's not just rainwater that's causing the rust.
That's a fair point, actually, Josh. And that place up at the top, I forgot the name of the street, at the top where the escalator comes up, that's a famous hangout. There's some benches there. Yeah. And it's like a quiet corner, and it's a favorite hangout for the people who just might do exactly what you're suggesting. But I mean, how embarrassing is this? 3 years at the bus station, Gabby. I guess you don't seem like a bus person to me, I have to say. Are you a bus person or not?
Well, I don't own a car, so I'm a bus, tram, and train person.
Oh, like intercity buses, I mean.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, okay. So you step off your bus, and you've got your bags full of whatever you buy. I don't know what you buy when you're out of Krakow. And you need to go upstairs, and you're greeted by the broken escalator.
I mean, it is a pain. However, having said that, I can thoroughly recommend getting a backpack instead of carrying suitcases for these particular reasons.
Josh, over the years,
like one of those big camping rucksacks.
Oh, those massive ones.
Yeah, use those.
But always have like the yoga mat on the top.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I exclusively just use those these days because there's always broken escalators or lifts or
and
whatever.
Plus, stairs are good for you, I guess.
Yeah, it's good for your legs, isn't it?
Josh, I'm sure you remember all the different renovation plans around the city over the last decade or so that kind of fall in the same category of, fixed and then broken and then stays broken, whether it's repaving streets, tram tracks that are replaced, different things like this. It just seems that no job is ever really done. There's always a repair that needs to be made in the first few months, and it's an ongoing drama like this.
Well, and I think that a big part of it is perhaps a slowness on the part of the authorities to realise that when you make some kind of infrastructure improvement, there's not only the initial capital cost of doing that, there's the often very considerable ongoing maintenance costs. And something like, I'm not going to get into the boring details of how escalators work, but they are frighteningly complicated and very, very easy to screw up. Because,
a lot of moving parts.
Just like, rubbish and bottles, you've got to have, very, very robust mechanisms for ensuring.
I expect there's a lot of cogs down there as well, lots of moving parts.
And open to the air on top of that.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
This is going back, many, many years, but I can remember travelling on the underground kind of at times when one of the escalators is out of order and they've got the side off and you can see the workings of it. I mean, maybe there's a whole escalator page on Wikipedia, but they are super complicated, very, very expensive, and require kind of round-the-clock maintenance, pretty much. Mm.
This reminds me of, I can't remember what year it was. When did they redo the surface in the Rinnick? I want to say 2007.
No, it was earlier than that. Because it was done when I moved here in 2006.
Earlier than that. Anyway, so huge project.
In fact, I think it was new. It was brand new when I was here on my first visit in 2003.
Yeah, then we must be talking about different renovations than the one where they discovered what's in the underground museum now.
Oh, yeah, no, that's much more recent. Yeah, that's
let's say
2007,
8, 9, something like that. Anyway, so huge project. God knows how much it cost. They finally get it done. Life in the Rinnick goes back to normal, and immediately stones, part of the pavement here and there, starts cracking and breaking in different places. And so the city hauls the contractor in and says, what the hell? We paid all this money and it's already breaking. The contractor says, well, but there are delivery trucks driving over it and they're heavy and they crack the pavement. Yeah. Yeah, delivery trucks come every morning, as they have for God knows how long. So they didn't take into consideration the weight of the delivery trucks that were there in the morning to supply the various businesses. That was one thing.
In the 1970s, you had cars parking.
That's true. And then on top of that, this is the best part. In other places, the what do you call it? The stuff that's in between the stones, kind of like, I would say it would be grouting in a bathroom. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it the same thing on the street?
I guess so.
The stuff that fills the space between stones. Yeah.
Mortar.
So the mortar. Yeah. So it's eroding almost immediately. And the geniuses in the city government discover that it's because the horses are standing there and pissing on it all day. Again, did we not know there were horses in the Riddick before we ordered and financed and paid for the renovation?
Catheters for all the horses!
Jesus Christ. And so the same thing applies here. Oh, you wanted an outdoor escalator. Oh, you didn't tell us that. That's why it's broken all the time. I mean, my God, how stupid. One more piece of local news. Just saw this as a very interesting stat. We've mentioned before, Josh, that as an occasional car driver, I have an interest in this stuff. Maybe you guys don't, but I think it's interesting anyway. We saw stats from the city office that tell us in the last 2.5 years, so that's since more or less the middle of 2019, that 60,000 new cars have been documented and licensed to operate on the roads of Krakow. 60,000 new ones on top of what already existed. It was about 450,000 prior to this. Mm-hmm. So what is that? 50, that's 100 and, let's call it 100 weeks, 60,000. What is that? 600?
Maths.
Is that 600 cars a week?
Yeah.
Yeah, 600 cars a week. Every day. Now, you may have noticed that the streets of Krakow have not expanded at a similar rate, nor have the parking spaces.
Nor has the transport system.
Yeah, exactly. So we get more and more 60,000. Try to visualize what 60,000 cars looks like.
It's a lot of cars,
and that's what's just been added over the previous total in the last 2.5 years. Where people park, I have no idea. I can only give you my anecdotal experience from my neighborhood. Gabby, I know you have something similar. Where I live, they keep building block after block after block. Some people buy a parking space in the garage under the block. Some people don't. They have to park out on the street. We've already reached the point where there is no more parking on the street, basically, but they're still building more blocks. I just don't know how this works in certain part of the city.
It's time to stop building those blocks.
But they're not going to. And people are not going to stop buying cars either.
In that case, it's time to start expanding the transport network system, because you can't just have cars everywhere. But
people still want their cars.
Well, they can have them. And sure, they can drive them if they've got lots of shopping to do or something. But you really do need to start thinking as a city, and I'm talking to the city here, start thinking about how to encourage people to not use their cars.
Well, they are doing that by making the roads narrower, by reducing the number of available parking opportunities in the city centre.
I mean actual carrot stuff, like having really nice.
You want to use government power to coerce people to not use cars?
No, absolutely. I mean, yes.
Listen to yourself.
I want a tram system that works, man.
Well, that's giving people options, not saying, we're going to punish you for driving a car.
What's wrong with the tram system? It seems to me to be pretty good.
We have a good one, and people still buy cars. That's my point. Because people want cars.
It's okay, but it is clunky, and there could be more. A lot of the time, they've reduced the trams. So sometimes you're waiting 20 minutes for a tram.
Well, actually, no. We briefly discussed this. I think in a recent show, and I made the point. And I mean, you can see this just near to the studios here, because it's one of the major tram stops, and there is always a tram.
Yeah.
Certainly within, the kind of waking hours. Mm-hmm. So you can't physically get more trams through. No, and for every one of those hubs, they are they're the bottleneck on the system. So you need to have actually more physical lines.
I'm talking about expanding the network to where the blocks are being built. So I'm talking about to IKEA. Well, IKEA is. But
you can't have a tram network that extends to everybody's block.
But where there's obviously going to be massive growth. So towards IKEA.
All due respect, Gabby, I think it's naive to think that even the best transport network in the world is going to persuade people to say, you know what, I don't want my own car, I want to jump on the tram. As incomes rise in Poland, standards of living increase, having your own car and actually having multiple cars in the same family is part of that.
No, I think actually the situation is very, very blunt. I mean, people are going to continue to want to have cars. They're going to continue buying cars. It's going to be more and more traffic problems, and it's horrible. But
Josh,
you just deal with it.
Give
or
us
you don't.
some perspective as a Londoner. Is it, do we have it really? Is it that bad here, or can it be a lot worse than it is? I mean, how would you compare the situation?
Well,
versus London?
I mean, although kind of I'm a Londoner. My youngest years were spent kind of close to Oxford, and Oxford, which has a lot of parallels to Krakow in many ways. I mean, some obvious, some not so obvious. And I remember when I was like 10, 11 years old, and it used to drive my father would like regularly go spare every weekend because he'd want to go and buy I don't know, DIY materials or something like that. And there's nowhere to sodding park, and they close off the roads, and you can't do this. And they force you to take the bus, but there's only a bus every 1.5 hours, and it's like, blah. And I mean, it was such a regular rant that it was all got very, very tedious. But I mean, clearly, the local authority in Oxford, very much like is the case here, they just realised that the city streets, which can't be expanded because they're old buildings and colleges and blah, 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 blah. So just make it very, very difficult for people to drive there because you can't just have them clogged with cars the whole time.
So the roads are what they are, deal with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't just pave everything, can you, have 6 lanes in the middle of the city? Where do you stop? It's ridiculous. At some point, you've got to say, or at some point, there's going to be so many cars that people are just going to be sitting in traffic, at which point people go, well, I'd rather just get the bus. Or
exactly. I mean, look, the car is in a way one of those great expressions of individual liberty, isn't it? I mean, I think whatever your kind of political persuasion, like the idea of being, having kind of direction, being able to like, I've got a car outside, I want to do this, I can jump in it and go now, and not sort of, like the bus is going to be along in 20 minutes, I better get my coat on and stuff. It's like, even if, I mean, we'd probably all like no traffic at all and cars that can go at 200 miles an hour. Just like that, or being able to teleport, I mean, that happens.
Quick question, short answers.
If you live where I live, you've got a 10-minute walk to the bus stop or a 20-minute walk to the nearest tram stop.
Gabby lives in the forest.
Yeah,
with the elves and the pixies.
The trolls.
Quick answer. There's an obvious answer, and that's our climate, but given the absence of parking, the difficulty navigating the congested roads, and don't forget the price of gasoline, which is now at 6 zlotys a litre, do you have a theory on why mopeds never caught on here? Is it just the climate, or is there something else?
I think it's probably the cold winters. You can only really use them for, 4 months a year? I mean, spring's kind of rainy. Summer's okay.
Well, I'd
say, like, you could probably get away with using your moped in June, July, August, September, October. And in November, it starts getting a bit cold.
I think I have to slightly disagree. I mean, you cycle as well. I mean, maybe not as much as you used to. But
I cycle as well.
I know that I'm definitely in a minority here, or not here, but I mean in the bigger picture. But I mean, I cycle pretty much the whole year round, and the days when I don't are when it's either really, really bucketing down with rain, and because I'm going somewhere and I don't want to be soaking wet when I arrive. I don't actually mind getting wet per se, but it's like, dealing with the consequences. Or when it's very snowy and icy and it's just very slippery because, I've fallen off my bike a few times and it's not nice.
I mean, I even cycle through snow sometimes.
Oh, yeah, no, I've cycled.
To wherever I'm going. So I'm not a fair weather cyclist, but with other people, they are, right? Like, if it's raining, you're not going to want to get on a moped, are you?
Yeah, just never became really a thing here, did it? I mean, apart from maybe deliveries and people with very short rides, just in the very center of town.
Well, bizarrely, of course. I mean, actually, that's just sort of in a kind of, it's weirdly kind of analogous with the whole electric scooter thing, isn't it? Because I mean, that involves about as much effort as riding a moped.
And plus, on top of that, in all fairness, you can spend some serious money on a moped. They're a lot more expensive than you might think
also,
for a nice one.
Would you want to be sharing your road with the crazy drivers in Poland on a moped?
I don't know.
Would you be willing to put your life into your hands?
I mean, because mopeds kind of have a limited maximum speed, and it's okay in the sort of 30 kilometre per hour zones, but when cars can be going sort of 50, 60 kilometres an hour, then that's not very nice.
Safety. Let's finish up with, actually it's a very small story, but it raises an interesting topic that's worth a bit of a discussion. Josh, we'll go to you because it comes from the world of English football. There's a guy named Matty Cash Matty Cash. Now, he might be somebody, if you're a real hardcore football fan, I don't know, he wasn't on my radar before I saw this story. But this week he got Polish citizenship through his mother. He was born in England, but through his mother he gets Polish citizenship, which he's getting only because he's a fairly elite level football player, and the citizenship is going to qualify him to play for the Polish team. Apparently his place on the Polish team is waiting for him, and so soon the Polish national team will have a player named Matty Cash because of, again, his mother. What's your take on the world of, footballers switching around kind of musical chairs almost through citizenship of their parents, sometimes grandparents?
Well, actually, what amused me about this whole thing, of course, was the fact that he actually bothered to take out Polish citizenship to do this, because, Dave would chuckle about this one, but, in years gone by when Jack Charlton was the manager of the Ireland football team, I mean, if you had one Irish grandparent, that was good enough to be able to play for Ireland. Yep. And, there was no necessity of signing any papers. And this poor guy, I mean, I don't know if you saw some of the tweets that he issued in Polish, sort of being very grateful for having his Polish citizenship and having the opportunity. And it's the type of Polish that I would write. It's like,
well, that's the thing. That's where the interesting topic comes up, because, in fact, apart from his mother.
Oh, yeah, sorry, John. This really made me laugh, because, not only his mother, but two of his grandparents are Polish.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Oh, how did that? Oh,
my mother is, but I have none of my grandparents are, but my mother is somehow. No. I have a problem with this because it cheapens citizenship, first of all. Citizenship is supposed to be something, much more important. It formalizes your belonging in a community, in a nation of people, and this is almost like shopping for citizenship. I'm an elite level football player. I'm not quite good enough to make the England team, which I think is the case here, Josh.
I think that's, yes.
I'm not quite good enough to make the England team, but I can probably be on the Polish team, and great, my mom's a Polish citizen. I never even considered becoming a Polish citizen for the first 20-some years of my life, but now I will, because it'll enable me to play a national level football. So yeah, sure, sign me up. That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, there's maybe another kind of perspective on this, which actually in the Cash household, it is Matty Cash who kind of wears the trousers, and it's like kind of, my son, if you want to play international football, become Polish.
So his mom was Dracula.
Hey, come on, comic license.
You cannot discuss this topic without mentioning our good friend Emmanuel Olasadebe, who was on
the famous Polish
the famous Polish international. He was on the 2002 squad that went to the World Cup that was the one in January in Japan and Korea, right?
Yeah.
No, that was 2006.
No. 2006 was Germany.
Oh, sorry. Okay, 2002 was the one. Are we sure about that? Well, whichever World Cup was in.
I don't remember.
Japan and South Korea. Emmanuel Olasadebe, he was from Nigeria, but he married a Polish woman. His Polish citizenship was expedited by the Polish president himself so that he could put on the uniform of the Polish national team. And he went on to score. We've talked about this before. He scored like 3/4 of their goals during the qualifying tournament. And without him, they don't even make the finals of the World Cup. But
well, I've got a hot take. Let's face it. Some of the best footballing nations are nations that have had huge amounts of immigration. So why don't Poland embrace it?
I'm trying to poke a hole in your thing. Well, Italy, maybe not so much. Germany, not until recently. Brazil, yes.
England, of course, Hungary dominated world football in the 1950s.
With 0 immigrants.
But that was 50 years ago.
This is true. This is fairly
We're talking about modern
70
football.
years ago.
Yeah, 70 years ago.
Yeah, true.
Modern football. You need the fresh blood. You need you need inspiration. Why can't he be an inspiration?
This story about Matty Cash.
Why can't it be the happy story of a Polish boy coming back home to play for the nation?
Because he didn't care about it until he realized he couldn't make it.
I haven't heard him speak, but because he plays for Aston Villa, and as far as I'm aware, he's a local, West Midlands guy. So if he could speak like that, it'd be it was great to be Polish.
No word on how good his Polish is. I don't think it's very good.
Polish, so
and two of his grandparents.
Let me just throw this out there.
The culture is going to be there.
One more thing I want to throw out there before we wrap this up. Think about, and this guy's 20-some years, I forgot, 24?
I think, no, he's youngish still, I think, 22, 23 maybe.
So think about all the Polish kids that were born in the UK over the last decade or so. in the next decade or next 15 years, how many of them are going to be in a similar position? Maybe play for Poland, maybe play for the UK. You could look at it in a positive or a critical way, I guess.
Exactly.
Good friends, both. They're a Polish couple back in the UK, and their son must be, I guess 11 or 12 now. And I mean, he's kind of like, he signed up with a very, very junior level at Chelsea or something like that. There's all these proud pictures of him doing that. But for sure. I mean, if he does turn out to be a good footballer, he would play for Poland. I mean, there isn't any doubt about that because both his parents are Polish, and even though he's born in Britain, I mean, you wouldn't have it any other way, would you? I mean,
and that's how it starts, and then eventually people in Poland will start taking it seriously as well.
But this
training, because we talked about that before.
This whole issue about if you're, probably your advisor, your agent or whatever says, listen, you're a really good footballer, but you're, because the competition, for example, for England places is very, very, very tight, and you have eligibility for a nation which does not have such a big pool of players to choose from. If you want to play international football,
do not put the money into training their youth.
Well, no. I'm not even.
It's not going there.
Yeah, I mean, Poland spends a lot of money actually on football training, and the network is actually very good. I mean, it's other things like years of isolation as well. But now kind of I don't know, 50% of Poland's internationals play across the Western European.
So what do you reckon in 20 years Poland are going to have like a world famous serious team because of all of the little...
Well, Poland's football peaked in the 70s, didn't it?
All of the Polish-British
Tomaszewski.
Let me just add this one thing that's popped into my head because I saw this guy on TV recently. It's not just the football team. Poland's national basketball team, yes, there is one. They have a guy named...
Patronising or what?
the initials AJ Slaughter, born in Kentucky.
AJ Slaughter.
Yes.
Great name.
Yes. He's black. His father's black. His mom's Polish. He's on the Polish national basketball team. And I think there's also another person with a similar background on the Polish national volleyball team. So these things happen. There are people have various mixed backgrounds, and sometimes they have this athletic talent, and it manifests itself in these ways. And so, when Matty Cash takes the field for Poland, which is going to confuse a lot of people, I think.
Maybe we'll switch the spelling of cash from CASH
that's true.
to KAH.
Yeah. Throw some R's and Z's in there or something like that. And when people see AJ Slaughter take the court for Poland, it's just...
Do you think his name's really Martin Cash?
That's a reference that hardcore KrakCast fans will get.
Especially if he's listening.
Which I doubt very much. Anyway, okay, let's wind this down. We've been talking too long. That is our take on some of the things in the news this week. Thanks for listening, everybody. Don't forget KrakCast.pl. All of our back episodes are there. And so on behalf of Gabby and Josh, I say thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time on the KrakCast.